My name is Rebecca Martinez. I'm 38 years old, a trauma surgeon at County General Hospital, and the mother of a beautiful 7-year-old daughter named Sophia. 6 months ago, I stood in my childhood bedroom for what I thought would be the last time, packing the final remnants of a life I'd tried so hard to build in the shadow of someone else's light. Before I tell you what brought me to that moment and what happened when I finally walked away, I need you to do something for me. If this story resonates with you, please take a moment to like and subscribe. Drop a comment below and let me know where you're watching from and what time it is there. I love connecting with all of you. And trust me when I say this story is one you'll want to hear all the way through. Now let me take you back to where it all began. Growing up in the Martinez household, I learned very early that there were two kinds of children, the golden ones and the forgotten ones. My younger brother Daniel was golden from the moment he took his first breath. I was 5 years old when he was born, and I remember standing on my tiptoes to peek into his bassinet, marveling at his tiny fingers and perfect little face. I loved him instantly. What I didn't understand then was that loving him would cost me everything. Daniel was special. Everyone said so. He was the son my father had always wanted, the boy who would carry on the family name. From the time he could walk, he was enrolled in every sport imaginable: soccer, baseball, basketball, swimming. My parents never missed a game, never missed a practice. Our living room walls were covered with his trophies, his ribbons, his team photos. When I was 12, I won the state science fair with a project on antibiotic resistance. I'd spent 6 months researching, experimenting, perfecting my presentation. I was so proud when they announced my name as the winner. I couldn't wait to tell my parents. I ran to the parking lot, clutching my first place ribbon, scanning the crowd for their faces. They weren't there. They'd forgotten. Daniel had a playoff game that same afternoon, and in the excitement, they'd simply forgotten to come to my competition. When I got home that evening, Dad was setting up a celebration dinner for Daniel's team making the finals. Mom was baking a cake. I walked in with my ribbon, and Dad glanced up. "Oh, sweetheart, how'd it go?" he asked, already turning back to the grill. "I won," I said quietly. "That's nice, honey," Mom called from the kitchen. "Can you set the table? We're having 15 people over." That was it. No congratulations. No questions about my project. No celebration. I set the table for Daniel's party and went to my room. I told myself it was fine. Science fairs weren't as important as sports. I was being selfish for wanting attention. These were the lies I fed myself for years. When I was 16, I got accepted to every college I applied to, including Johns Hopkins on a full academic scholarship. My parents' response? "That's wonderful, Rebecca, but we're going to need you to consider staying local. Daniel's going to need help with his college applications next year, and you know how busy we'll be with his recruitment process." Daniel was being recruited for college soccer, not by major universities, by small state schools with decent programs. But to my parents, he was destined for greatness. They needed to focus all their energy on making sure he got the best opportunities. I went to a local university on my scholarship. I lived at home to save money and spent my evenings helping Daniel write essays for schools that would ultimately reject him. 4 years of undergrad, 4 years of medical school, 6 years of surgical residency and fellowship. I did it all while living at home, contributing to household expenses, and being the family's emotional support system. When I was 28, during my 2nd year of surgical residency, I met James. He was kind, successful, and everything I thought I wanted. We got married in a small ceremony. Small because my parents insisted they needed to save money for Daniel's wedding someday, even though he wasn't even dating anyone seriously. When Sophia was born 2 years later, I thought things might change. I thought becoming a grandmother might shift something in my mother, might make her see me differently. She came to the hospital once, stayed for 20 minutes, took 2 photos, and then didn't visit again for 3 months. Meanwhile, she called Daniel daily, still doing his laundry even though he was 25 years old and living in her basement. James and I divorced when Sophia was 3. The reasons were complicated, but part of it was that he couldn't understand why I kept trying so hard with my family. "They don't appreciate you," he'd say. "Why do you keep going back?" I didn't have an answer. Or maybe I did, and I just couldn't admit it. They were my family. Wasn't I supposed to keep trying? After the divorce, I doubled down. I thought if I could just be more helpful, more present, more useful, they'd finally see me. I paid for Daniel's car repairs. I covered my parents' property taxes when Dad's business had a slow year. I babysat for Daniel's kids whenever he asked, even when I was exhausted from 18-hour shifts at the hospital. And I kept showing up to family dinners where Daniel was the center of every conversation. Then came the incident that changed everything. Last year, I was nominated for a prestigious surgical award, the Clemens Award for Excellence in Trauma Surgery. It's given to one surgeon in the entire state annually. I'd been working toward this my entire career. The ceremony was on a Saturday evening, black tie, at the city's most elegant hotel. I bought a new dress, I had my hair done. I asked my parents weeks in advance if they could come. "Of course, honey," Mom said. "We wouldn't miss it." For once, I believed her. For once, I thought this might be the moment where things shifted, where they finally saw all the years of hard work, all the sacrifices, all the achievements they'd overlooked. I even reserved seats for them at my table, next to Sophia and my closest colleagues. The night of the ceremony, I was backstage, waiting to go on. My phone buzzed, a text from Mom. "Rebecca, I'm so sorry. Daniel's son has a championship soccer game tonight. It's a really big deal. We need to be there for him. We'll make it up to you. Congratulations on the nomination, sweetie." I read the message 3 times. Daniel's son was 10 years old. It was a recreational league championship. My hands were shaking as I walked onto that stage. I smiled for the cameras as they announced my name. I gave my acceptance speech, thanking my colleagues, my mentors, my daughter. My parents' seat sat empty, a glaring reminder that even my greatest professional achievement couldn't compete with a child's soccer game. That night, holding my award, I finally understood something I'd been avoiding for 33 years. It wasn't that I wasn't good enough. It wasn't that I hadn't achieved enough. It was that in my family, I would never be Daniel. And because I could never be Daniel, I would never matter. I didn't confront them immediately. I went home, put Sophia to bed, and sat with that realization. The next morning, I woke up and nothing had changed. My parents texted asking if I could watch Daniel's kids that afternoon, as if the previous night hadn't happened, as if they hadn't just missed the most important night of my professional life. I said yes, because that's what I always did. But something was different now. The automatic response felt mechanical. The smile I forced felt foreign. I was going through the motions of being the helpful daughter, the reliable sister, the person who never complained. But inside, something had broken. 2 weeks later, I got a call from my mother. It was Tuesday afternoon. I was between surgeries, exhausted, running on 4 hours of sleep. "Rebecca," she said, her voice tight with urgency, "I need a favor." My stomach dropped. Those words never led anywhere good. "What is it, Mom?" I asked. "Daniel's business is struggling. The restaurant he opened, it's not doing well. He's about to lose everything. He needs $50,000 to keep the doors open." I closed my eyes. Daniel had opened a restaurant 6 months ago, despite having no experience in the food industry. He'd borrowed money from my parents, maxed out credit cards, and convinced himself he'd be the next celebrity chef. I'd warned him it was risky. He'd laughed and said I worried too much. "Mom, I don't have $50,000 to give away," I said carefully. "It's not giving it away. It's helping your brother. It's what family does." Her voice took on that edge, that tone that said I was being selfish, ungrateful, difficult. "Mom, I have a daughter to support. I have student loans. I have a mortgage. I can't just..." "You're a doctor, Rebecca. You make good money. Daniel is struggling. This restaurant is his dream. You wouldn't understand because you've never had to fight for anything. Everything's always come easy to you." I actually laughed. It came out harsh and bitter. "Everything came easy to me?" I repeated. "Mom, I worked 2 jobs through college. I studied 80 hours a week in medical school. I did a 6-year surgical residency where I barely slept. Nothing came easy." "That was your choice," she snapped. "Nobody forced you to become a surgeon." And there it was, the truth she'd never said out loud, but had lived every day of my life. My achievements weren't valuable because I'd chosen them. Daniel's dreams mattered because he was Daniel. My success was expected, unremarkable, barely worth acknowledging. His failures were tragedies that required everyone's sacrifice. "I can't help him, Mom," I said quietly. "Can't or won't." "Both," She hung up. For 2 days, I heard nothing. Then my phone started blowing up. Text messages from my father, from Daniel, from aunts and cousins I barely spoke to. They all said the same thing in different words. I was selfish. I was abandoning family. I was choosing money over blood. Daniel called me directly on the 3rd day. "Rebecca, please," he said. "I know we've had our differences, but I'm begging you. I'll lose everything. My house, my car, my kids' college fund. Everything." "Daniel, you put your kids' college fund into a restaurant?" I asked, horrified. "I had to. I believed in this. Why can't you believe in me?" "Because believing in you has always meant sacrificing myself," I said. The words came out before I could stop them. "I've spent my entire life being second place to you. Every achievement I've ever had, you were more important. Every time I needed something, you needed it more. I'm 38 years old, Daniel. I can't keep doing this. So that's it. You're just going to let me fail. I'm going to let you handle your own consequences," I said. And I hung up. The fallout was immediate and brutal. My parents stopped speaking to me entirely. Daniel sent a long email detailing every way I'd failed as a sister. Relatives weighed in on Facebook, posting vague messages about the importance of family loyalty and how some people forget where they came from. I was painted as the villain in a story where I'd spent 38 years being the supporting character. But something strange happened. For the first time in my life, I felt light. The constant anxiety of waiting for the next crisis, the next demand, the next disappointment, it was gone. I went to work, I came home to Sophia, I cooked dinner, I read bedtime stories. I lived my life without the weight of trying to earn love that was never going to be freely given. Okay, I need to pause here for a moment. If you've ever felt like you were giving and getting nothing back, type exhausted in the comments. If you've ever been the reliable one, the responsible one, the one who everyone expects to fix everything, type relate. And if you're still with me on this journey, hit that like button. Trust me, what happens next is worth staying for. 3 months passed, 3 months of silence from my family, 3 months of peace. Then, on a random Tuesday evening, there was a knock on my door. I wasn't expecting anyone. Sophia was at a friend's house for a sleepover. I opened the door and found my Aunt Patricia standing there. Aunt Patricia was my mother's older sister, someone I'd always liked, but rarely saw. She lived 3 states away and only came back for major holidays. We hadn't spoken since the whole restaurant debacle began. "Can I come in?" she asked. I stepped aside and let her in. We sat in my living room, and for a moment neither of us spoke. Then she said, "I need to tell you something. Something I should have told you years ago." My heart started racing. "What is it?" "Your mother," she began carefully, "has always had this idea in her head about what made someone worthy of love. She and your father, they tried for years to have a baby. 7 years of trying, 3 miscarriages, mountains of medical bills. Then you came along. You were supposed to be the miracle, the answer to their prayers." I sat very still, listening. "But you were born a girl," Aunt Patricia continued. "And your father, he'd always wanted a son. Someone to carry on the name, to do the father-son things he'd dreamed about. When Daniel came along 5 years later, easily, unexpectedly, he became everything your father had ever wanted. And your mother, she wrapped all her identity into being the mother of a son. It doesn't excuse how they treated me," I said quietly. "No," she agreed. "It doesn't. Nothing excuses it. But I wanted you to understand that it was never about you. You could have been perfect, and you were, you are, and it still wouldn't have been enough. Because in their minds, Daniel was the real achievement. You were just the practice round." The words hit me like a physical blow. The practice round, that's what I'd been my entire life. The warm-up act for the main event. "Why are you telling me this now?" I asked. "Because they're planning something," Aunt Patricia said. "There's a family reunion in 2 weeks, your grandmother's 90th birthday. Everyone's going to be there. And I've heard through the grapevine that your mother is planning to make a public spectacle of you. She's been telling people you abandoned Daniel in his time of need, that you're selfish and money-obsessed, that you've turned your back on the family." I felt sick. "So she's going to humiliate me in front of everyone. That's what she's planning, Aunt Patricia confirmed. But I'm here to tell you that you have a choice. You can skip the reunion, which is what she expects. She'll take your absence as proof of guilt, or you can show up and tell your side of the story. I don't want to make a scene, I said. You won't have to. I'm going to help you, but you need to decide if you're ready to stop being silent about what they've done to you. That night, after Aunt Patricia left, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about all the years of being overlooked, dismissed, used. I thought about Sophia, about the example I was setting for her. Did I want her to grow up thinking it was okay to accept crumbs of affection from people who should love you unconditionally? By morning, I'd made my decision. I was going to the reunion, and I was going to tell the truth. The 2 weeks leading up to the reunion were a blur of preparation. Aunt Patricia helped me put together a timeline of every major achievement in my life that my parents had missed or minimized. Every award ceremony they skipped. Every milestone they forgot. Every time they'd chosen Daniel over me. It wasn't meant to be vindictive. It was meant to be factual. 2000, I also made a decision about money. I'd been tracking it for years without really looking at the numbers. Car payments for Daniel. Down payment on his first house. Business loans he never repaid. Emergency funds for this crisis or that. College tuition for his kids. The property tax payments for my parents. The new roof. The medical bills. Over 15 years, I'd given my family $180,000. I wasn't going to demand it back. But I was going to make sure everyone knew exactly how much I'd contributed to this family that called me selfish. The reunion was held at a country club my parents had rented out. It was a beautiful space, elegant and expensive. I later learned that Daniel had helped pay for it, which meant my parents had helped him pay for it, which meant they'd found money somewhere despite claiming they were broke. I arrived with Sophia and Aunt Patricia. Sophia looked beautiful in her new dress, excited to see her grandparents and cousins. She didn't understand the undercurrents, the tension, the battle that was about to unfold. I wanted to keep it that way. The moment we walked in, I felt eyes on us. Conversations paused. My mother, across the room, went pale. Daniel, standing with his wife and kids, looked like he'd seen a ghost. Clearly, they hadn't expected me to show up. My grandmother, the birthday girl, lit up when she saw me. At 90, she was sharp as ever, and she'd always had a soft spot for me, though distance and my parents' management had kept us from being close. "Rebecca," she called out, arms open. "And little Sophia, come here, my darlings." We embraced her, and I felt a warmth I rarely experienced in this family. As we talked, I saw my mother making her way over, her expression carefully controlled. "Rebecca," she said coolly, "I'm surprised you came." "It's Grandma's birthday," I said simply. "I wouldn't miss it." Her jaw tightened, but she forced a smile. The next hour was excruciating. I made small talk with relatives, many of whom had clearly heard one version of recent events and were viewing me with suspicion or pity. I kept Sophia close, playing with cousins, eating cake, blissfully unaware of the storm brewing. Then came the moment I'd been dreading and anticipating in equal measure. My father stood up to make a toast. He called for everyone's attention, glass raise. I felt Aunt Patricia's hand on my arm. Here it comes. "Some people understand that family's about sacrifice," Dad continued, "about putting others before yourself. Like my son Daniel, who's worked so hard to build something meaningful, who's dedicated himself to his dreams even when the road got tough." There were murmurs of agreement, supportive nods toward Daniel. "And some people," Dad's voice grew colder, "forget where they came from. They let success and money go to their heads. They turn their backs on family when they're needed most." He wasn't looking at me, but everyone else was. The implication was clear. "Now, I'm not one to air family business in public," he continued, which was rich coming from someone who was literally doing exactly that. "But I think it's important that we all understand what real loyalty looks like, what real family values look like." I stood up. My legs were shaking, but I stood. "Dad," I said clearly, "can I say something?" The room went silent. He looked at me, surprised and annoyed. "Rebecca, You're in the middle of publicly shaming me without giving me a chance to respond," I interrupted. "So yes, I'd like to say something, if that's okay with Grandma, since this is her party." My grandmother, bless her, smiled. "By all means, sweetheart, I'd love to hear what you have to say." I walked to the front of the room. Sophia was watching me with wide eyes. I gave her what I hoped was a reassuring smile. "I want to tell you all a story," I began. "It's about a little girl who won the state science fair when she was 12. Her parents didn't come to see her receive the award because they were at her brother's soccer game. That little girl told herself it was okay. Science fairs weren't as important as sports." I saw a few relatives shift uncomfortably. "That same girl got into Johns Hopkins on a full scholarship. Her parents asked her to stay local so she could help her brother with his college applications. She did. She went to a local school, lived at home, and spent her evenings editing essays for schools that would ultimately reject her brother." My mother's face had gone from pale to red. "That girl worked her way through medical school, did a 6-year surgical residency, got married and had a baby with almost no support from her family, divorced, rebuilt her life. And last year, she won the Clemens Award for Excellence in Trauma Surgery, one of the highest honors in her field." I paused, looking around the room. Her parents didn't attend the ceremony because her brother's son had a recreational soccer game that night. A 10-year-old's recreational game was more important than their daughter's Lifetime Achievement Award. The silence was deafening. My father's face was purple with rage, but he didn't interrupt. "Over the past 15 years, I continued, my voice steady now, I've given my family $180,000. Car payments, down payments, business loans, emergency funds, tuition, property taxes, roof repairs. I never asked for it back. I never asked for gratitude. I just wanted to help because that's what family does." Gasps around the room. Daniel looked like he wanted to disappear. 3 months ago, my brother asked me for $50,000 to save his failing restaurant. A restaurant he opened with no experience, using his children's college fund as collateral. I said no, not because I don't love him, not because I'm selfish, but because I finally understood that helping him meant enabling him, that rescuing him from his own choices wasn't love. It was hurting both of us. I turned to face my parents directly. "You want to talk about family loyalty? Let's talk about it. Loyalty isn't one-sided. Love isn't something you have to earn by being endlessly useful. And sacrifice doesn't mean destroying yourself so someone else can shine." My voice broke slightly, but I kept going. "I have spent 38 years trying to be good enough for you. Smart enough, successful enough, helpful enough. And it was never enough because I committed the unforgivable sin of not being Daniel. I was the warm-up act, the practice round, the reliable one who would always be there to pick up the pieces while you celebrated him." Tears were streaming down my face now, but I didn't wipe them away. "I'm done," I said simply. "I'm done trying to earn something that should have been freely given. I'm done being the scapegoat for a family that wants to pretend their problems are my fault. And I'm done being silent about what you've done to me." I looked around the room at faces ranging from shocked to sympathetic to angry. "I love you all," I said. "But I love myself and my daughter more. And I refuse to teach her that it's okay to accept crumbs of affection from people who should cherish you." I turned to my grandmother. "Happy birthday, Grandma. I'm sorry your party became about this. You deserve better." She stood up slowly and crossed the room to embrace me. "Don't you dare apologize," she whispered. "I'm proud of you. So proud." That's when things erupted. My mother started shouting about how I was ungrateful, how I'd embarrassed the family. My father was yelling about disrespect. Daniel was trying to defend himself, claiming I'd twisted everything. But other voices started joining in. Aunt Patricia stood up. "She's telling the truth. I've watched you do this to her for 33 years. A cousin I'd always liked spoke up. "I remember when you missed her medical school graduation. You told us all you had the flu, but we saw the photos from Daniel's game that day on Facebook." One by one, relatives began sharing their own observations. Times they'd noticed the favoritism, moments they'd felt uncomfortable with how my parents treated me. The facade was crumbling. I took Sophia's hand. "We're leaving," I said to Aunt Patricia. As we walked toward the door, my grandmother called out, "Rebecca, wait." I turned. She was holding an envelope. "I want you to have this. I was going to give it to you privately, but I think now is better." I opened it, confused. Inside was a letter and a check. The check was for $200,000. "I've been watching," Grandma said. "I've seen what they've done to you, what they've taken from you. I'm 90 years old and I won't live forever. I want to make sure you're taken care of, that Sophia is taken care of, not by them, by me." I burst into tears. "Grandma, I can't. You can and you will, she said firmly. Consider it back payment for everything they took from you, and a down payment on the relationship I hope we can build for whatever time I have left. My mother went ballistic. Mother, you can't be serious. That money was supposed to... Supposed to what? Grandma turned to her. Help you enable your son's mistakes, reward you for neglecting your daughter. It's my money, Helen, and I'm giving it to someone who actually deserves it. I left that party holding my daughter's hand on one side and my grandmother's check on the other. Behind me, I could hear the family falling apart. But for the first time in my life, that wasn't my problem to fix. The aftermath was messy. My parents tried to contest the gift, claiming Grandma wasn't of sound mind. Her lawyer shut that down immediately with medical documentation of her complete mental competency. Daniel sent me angry messages for weeks, claiming I'd poisoned the family against him. I blocked his number, but something else happened too. Relatives I barely knew reached out to apologize for not speaking up sooner. My grandmother and I started having weekly video calls. She wanted to know everything about Sophia, about my work, about my life. For the first time, I had a family member who was genuinely interested in me. I used part of Grandma's gift to pay off my student loans. Part went into a college fund for Sophia, and part went into savings, a cushion I'd never had before. The weight of constant financial stress lifted. 4 months after the reunion, I got a letter from my mother. Not a text, not an email, a handwritten letter. I almost threw it away without reading it, but curiosity got the better of me. Dear Rebecca, it began. I've spent the past few months thinking about what you said, about what I've done. Your father and I have been in counseling, trying to understand how we got here. I can't undo 38 years of hurt. I can't take back missed ceremonies and forgotten achievements. But I want you to know that I see it now. I see what we did to you, what we took from you. I see that you deserved better. You deserved so much better. The letter continued for 3 pages. It wasn't perfect. Parts of it still made excuses, still tried to justify, but parts of it were genuine, raw. Honest in a way I'd never heard from her before. I didn't respond immediately. I sat with it for weeks. I talked to my therapist about it, and eventually I wrote back. Not to forgive, not to forget, but to leave the door open, just a crack, for the possibility of something different. I appreciate your letter, I wrote. I appreciate the acknowledgement, but words alone aren't enough. If you want a relationship with me, with Sophia, it has to be different. It has to be real. No more comparisons to Daniel. No more treating me like the supporting character in someone else's story. I deserve to be seen, not for what I can give you, but for who I am. It's been 6 months since the reunion now. My relationship with my parents is tentative at best. We've had a few supervised visits, short coffee meetings where they get to see Sophia for an hour. It's awkward. It's uncomfortable. But there are moments, small ones, where I see genuine effort. Last week, my mother asked about my work. Actually asked, wanted to know about a surgery I'd performed, about a patient I'd saved. She listened. She asked follow-up questions. It was strange and wonderful and heartbreaking all at once. I don't know if they'll ever truly change. I don't know if we'll ever have the relationship I wanted as a child. But I've learned something crucial. I don't need them to validate me. I don't need their approval to know my worth. I am enough. I've always been enough. As for Daniel, his restaurant closed. He filed for bankruptcy. He's working as a manager at a corporate chain now, rebuilding from scratch. We don't talk. Maybe someday we will. But for now, I'm okay with the distance. If you've stayed with me through this entire story, thank you. Thank you for listening. Thank you for caring. If this resonated with you, please hit that like button and subscribe. Share this with someone who needs to hear it. And drop a comment below. Tell me your story. Tell me about the moment you finally chose yourself. Because here's what I want you to understand. You are not selfish for having boundaries. You are not ungrateful for wanting to be seen. You are not a bad person for refusing to set yourself on fire to keep other people warm. Family is important, but you are important too. Your worth doesn't depend on how useful you are. Your value isn't determined by how much you sacrifice. You deserve to be loved for who you are, not what you can provide. And if the people in your life can't offer that, it's okay to step back. It's okay to create distance. It's okay to say enough. I look at Sophia now and I see the life I'm building for her. One where she'll never question her worth. Where she'll never compete for love that should be unconditional. Where she'll know without a doubt that she is seen, valued, and cherished. That's the gift I'm giving her. Not money, not opportunities, but the knowledge that she matters, that her voice matters, that she never has to earn what should be freely given. And in giving her that gift, I've given it to myself too. Thank you for being here. Thank you for listening to my story. Until next time, remember, you are worthy, you are enough, and you deserve to be treated like you matter. Because you do.